All right, everybody, welcome into the first episode of Learning Jazz Language of 2024. And today I got an awesome episode for you. Two amazing saxophonists, teachers, content creators, you name it, they do it. We've got Chris and Jeff with us. Thank you guys so much for joining us.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having
Thanks,
us.
Nick.
So I wanted to have these guys on because, as I'm sure a lot of you know, they did this really cool thing on YouTube slash Instagram slash all of the outlets called 30 Days of Bird, where they were transcribing a little bit of Bird every day. And I wanted to have them on to sort of see what the results were from that and ask you guys a bunch of questions about it. So I guess the first question would be, how and when did you guys decide that you wanted to do this, and why did you want to do it?
Do
Do you remember, Chris?
you want to? Yeah, I was gonna say, do you want to take that one? That one? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll take a stab. So, as Nick, I know you know, and some of your followers and listeners out there may or may not know. Chris and I released the Rhythm Project, an educational course aimed at bolstering up, uh, your rhythmic approach to improvisation. Uh, we worked on it for just about 1 year, and about a month or so before the launch, we were having one of our monthly or bi-monthly kind of catch-up calls to see, all right, what are the last things that we have got to button up before the release. And then we kind of were talking about um, thoughts for another project, what might be next. And I think Chris asked me like, well, what would you like if I was looking for something to practice? What would you tell me to practice? And I just off the top of my head, kind of jokingly, but seriously, said, I don't know, transcribe Bird for like 30 days and see what happens. I had these visions of like those YouTube videos that are out there, like I ate potatoes and steak for 90 days, and this is how shredded I got, stuff like that. Um, Not really thinking much of it. No, obviously knowing that transcribing is unarguably or arguably one of the greatest things to do with your time as an instrumentalist. And Bird is the goat, the king. Um, and so I didn't really think much of it. And then Chris, being Chris, sends me like a couple days later. He sends me like this calendar, like he'd already mapped out like exactly what he was gonna do on what day, and he's like, I'm training for this race, this ultra marathon, and when I'm done, like I know when I'm gonna be able to start it. And I was just like, typical Jeff, like looking at Chris and his, hyper organizational wizardry. I said, okay, yeah, all right, let's go. And then since Chris had picked a date, I also kind of picked a date, although I took a much more random approach to that. So that's kind of, I believe that's how it kind of came about. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds about right. I know it's all a blur now after
Uh,
the holidays and doing the 30 days. Boy, it was a fun challenge. Definitely fun. Definitely something I would consider doing again, but maybe a slightly different way.
Oh, that's interesting. So tell me a little bit about the actual, 30 days of doing it, because now you guys have decided to do this. You're sort of like in the thick of it. How did it go? How did it change throughout the 30 days? I mean, was it an intimidating thing to even like just get started with, or what did it look like at the beginning for you guys?
Yeah, so I would say like I had it mapped out like Jeff had said, and I had been, listening to Bird for a long time. I don't know, decades, we'll say. And so I had some songs that I've never learned before, some melodies that I never learned that I wanted to learn. There were parts of solos. I knew that I wouldn't be able to get through full solos. Some of them I did. I was able to get through like entire choruses or two choruses, but other ones I knew I'd have to take like chunks. So in my calendar that Jeff talked about earlier, I had I had like timestamps and things, and then how it changed throughout. Like, so I don't think what me or Jeff really thought about before we started the adventure was, oh, we got to make content out of this too, not just transcribe every day for 30 minutes and then just go on with our day and our work and our kids and wives and whatever else we have going on. So that was like a whole nother undertaking in terms of like, oh, I'm playing this really hard music and transcribing it, and sometimes it's just like melting your brain, and then other times you're like, okay, I got this, and then you have to make some piece of content to show, hey, here's what I did today. And so we kind of had our own little style. I think Jeff had his it's 30 days of bird, it's 30 days of bird, right? And then I just kind of had some kind of intro each time, and depending on the day, it was either like, this is it, this is all I have today, and then other days were a little bit more artistic in nature of the way I like to try to shoot things. But yeah, I think the biggest thing that evolved over the 30 days was, for myself, I started hearing stuff, and even in the first like 5 to 7 days, I started getting things a lot quicker. I didn't have to slow things down as much. Started getting further along in in the transcription, further than maybe I had planned. Like in my timestamp, I might have said like 2 minutes to 2:22, and I might have gotten to 2:36 in the timestamp or something. So things like that. Yeah, that was one of the bigger things that started happening over time. And I will have a video of all this stuff. It's with the holiday break, I took a little break from content creating, so I have some stuff put together. I'll be putting out pretty soon.
Yeah. So Jeff, what was it like for you at the beginning? Just getting into it.
So getting into it was okay. I again, I'm a very, I think I think a reason Chris and I work well together is I believe we're very different people,
Mm.
which is great. And I'm not very organized. I can be very, I can get into details, and I'm very like perfectionist when it comes to like practicing or learning things, as you guys know. But I just went at it. I picked a tune. I remember I picked Just Friends. I was like, all right, I'm gonna learn. And we hadn't even talked about the 30-minute aspect of it before when we kind of came up with the idea. I just For whatever reason, that just stuck out in my head. I was like, all right, I'm setting a timer for 30 minutes, and I'm gonna learn this first, intro lick on Just Friends. And then, like Chris was alluding to, when you had to realize and figure out, okay, we have to produce content. Then I was just winging it. And then I was like, all right, well, maybe I'll just record myself learning this part, record myself learning this part, and then I finally figured out how to like piece together the reels on Instagram. And then I figured out where the captions thing was. And then, so I was, and I was trying to take a more lighter approach to it as the days went on. I remember the first couple of days felt really good. Um, and then, man, I don't know, you hit like that 2 week mark or something, and then I'm traveling for work, and then I'm like, man, I gotta like now I'm like shedding in a hotel, and it's like it's all these things, and I'm still gonna make these things, but I got all these time. Yeah, it was just like it was getting a little stressful. But I mean, at the end of the day, it was definitely a bold undertaking, and something I'm happy with how it came out. And like I too plan on kind of splicing them all together. I kept a practice notebook,
Mm.
which is about like of everything that I transcribed, which you know again, like depending on days, like I would do that for 30 minutes, right? But then you got to spend another, what, 10-15 minutes making the stupid reel. And then like sometimes I would be writing it out as I was transcribing, in my 30 minutes, and other times if I had some time, then I would write it out. But I got a lot of blank pages on the book. But I definitely feel I would like to kind of release that if people are interested in that sort of thing, because I think it's some cool stuff. It's heads, it's full solos, parts of solos. and just, pure genius, as we know.
Yeah.
Yeah, as Bird often does to us. So it's interesting what you guys said. So like content creation aside, right? Because that's a lot of most people out there aren't going to be worrying about that. Most people would just be like, well, if I could just do this 30 days of one artist every day, that would be great for me, right? So setting that goal in public is pretty cool because now you kind of have to do it, right? Like
Yeah.
you said,
Uh
okay, this series is called 30 Days of Bird. Everybody's going to be expecting something from you, right?
Yep.
What did you learn about? I mean, I'm sure that both of you transcription is mostly something that you're doing every day, right? But how did that consistency pay off for you? How difficult was it to do? When you set the goal for yourself, was it like, I'll be happy if I transcribe one note today? How did that consistency piece go into it, both in making sure that you get it done, and then what did it do for your playing, do you think? What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, so it was, I would say, like with Jeff, what Jeff just kind of piggybacking off that, there was times where it got rough. Like it was just like it's a roller coaster. You start out really on this real big high. You're really stoked. Kind of like right now, like the beginning of the year, people are setting New Year's resolutions and getting really amped to like meal plan and do fitness stuff and whatever else their goals are. And it's like you start there, and that first week is like, oh, it's like everything's going real smooth, and you're just like, all right, this is cool. And then you get in 2 weeks of it, and you're just like, oh man, this is getting pretty tiring. And 3 weeks, you're just like, wow, okay. And then you have these like really great moments, and then when you get that last week, you're just like, wow, I just need to finish this thing. Um, it's almost like it was like a race in a way, like a marathon. And I think for me at least, and Jeff can speak for himself, but for me, I think putting it out there in public, saying like, all right, 30 days a bird, and both of us didn't take exactly 30 days. Like Jeff said, he had work stuff. We actually saw each other in the middle of the challenge,
Yeah, we did.
New York, which was awesome. And so I was on vacation, and then so like it didn't take us exactly 30 days, but we got 30 days in, however you want to split it. And I think putting it in public and making it, trying to be consistent every day with it was an added pressure, and felt like 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 you needed to show up for people, which was cool. I like that element of it, but it also was like I also just like to do practice my own stuff and not have to worry about showing it to 10 people or whoever's watching, like.
Hmm.
So but it was, did I answer your question actually? But that was okay.
Yeah, man.
But
It's basically just like
yeah,
that's a quite an undertaking. You know, it's like you have to be consistent. And I was just
yeah,
wondering if that consistency, I don't know, gave you any insights into, oh, I need more consistency in my life, or
yeah,
wow, this is too
definitely.
much. This was too much pressure. Like, what that did to you.
So I think like, I mean, I've seen you really working your ass off on that Joe Lovano solo, right? And
Hmm.
and that's probably something you spend time with, maybe a week every two, you're spending each week, you're spending time on that. And that's how I like to normally transcribe. So transcribing something new every single day was something really new for me. I've never done that, like switched a tune every single day and then tried to transcribe that. So that was a whole new challenge in itself. Transcribing every day is pretty normal for me. But not having a new tune or new solo every single day, that was it was a different kind of transcribing challenge. And what I would do in between to help me prep for the next day was I was listening like nonstop and singing. And I think the biggest thing I grabbed from this transcription challenge was how much singing, like me singing outside of the practice room and in the practice room, but how much singing has helped like me transcribe faster and get the language way easier. So if I'm singing one thing one day, that might help me 5 days from now, because like I sang a couple of enclosures or a couple of lines that are so familiar now to my ear. That's like, oh, that's that diminished. He goes up that diminished and then resolves. Like that's that classic Bird thing he does. But now I hear it, and instantaneously, like I can play it.
Oh
So
man, I hope all my students are listening right now. That's
Yeah.
that's a huge takeaway. What about you, Jeff?
So yeah, so I'm pretty consistent with my practice. I although just like with most of us, every day is different. So what I'm going to practice could be vastly different from a day after day after day type of thing. For me, as long as I'm playing the horn or a horn, I'm good. Um, the the thing about the, one of the biggest things that I experienced, and nobody forced me to do it, but I had just recently purchased like a nice alto saxophone. Um, and so I decided I was going to transcribe most of all this stuff on alto instead of tenor, which is my main horn. Um, Although it was fun to get in some of those tenor solos that Bird recorded, and again, like when I was on the road with the army, I had my tenor with me. Um, but man, if you want to learn how to play alto saxophone, transcribe Charlie Parker every day for 30 days. I think it would be like and like the the majority of comments that I got, was some of the I I appreciate the comments that are like, man, you actually sound like an alto player instead of a tenor player playing
Right,
alto,
right. Yeah.
which is a trap that a lot of us can kind of fall into because I mean, yeah, you can play it like a tenor, but it is such a strange instrument, right? And I think that's a reason why we only have what, like, can you count them more than two hands, like the voices on alto. Obviously Bird casts such a giant shadow on it. But yeah, just that process of like of picking that horn up and being consistent with it got it got a little easier every day. The intonation got a little bit cooler for me. um, and um, the other thing for your students, obviously, is it's just the more the more you do anything, but obviously with transcribing, and especially if you're like if you can be super disciplined with it, right? Not super rigid, right?
Mhm.
Like just super disciplined, like come up with a plan. Like, all right, I might not have 30 minutes today, but do I have 10 minutes? If you have 10 minutes, get your setup, whatever it is, put the horn together. If it's YouTube or your phone or or your whatever app you're going to use, and just do the thing for 10 minutes because, when one day turns into 2 days, turns into 7 days, turns into 14 days, regardless of playing level and experience, your ears are just going to organically open up and I will admit I have good ears. I've always had good ears. So anytime I dive into something like this, man, it's like, I'm here. I can, yeah, like you're hearing things a lot quicker, and you're able to put it all together. Right, there's that connection, right, between the fingers and the ears, I think is a very real thing. So, yeah, just staying with it and just trying to be as consistent as possible, right? And not like beating yourself up if you don't get to it. Like I hit like 20 something days in a row, and then I just couldn't do it. And then I lost track of it. I was like, one day I was like, I don't even know what day it is. It's 20 something, and you're but just trying to do it. And a big takeaway for me was you can get a lot done in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And I've known this. I've been telling all my students that for forever, but like rarely have I, like really kind of when you set that parameter, right? It's like it's like that thing. It's like, all right, I'm gonna play flute for 30 minutes. That's the longest 30 minutes of your day right there, right? Or I'm gonna transcribe Bird for 30 minutes, and that's like the quickest 30 minutes, and then
Mhm.
obviously depending on the solo or whatever, and some heads were harder than others, yada yada yada, all the stuff. But It's just do the thing as much as you can for sure.
I love that. That's like such a great thought going into 2024 is like just do the thing. You know, take action.
Yeah,
That's
man.
it.
We all know what we have to do. We
Yeah.
all know what we all know what we have to do. And so like, one of the things that me and Chris talk about a lot and might be one of our next projects and I think I put a there's a blog post up on the
Yeah.
website. For me, it's called like bulletproof practicing.
Mm,
It's just like think like be honest with yourself. Like, what are the things I need to be able to do? What are the things I want to be able to do?
hmm
Right? And you need to prioritize those. Like if all you're doing is like and there's a difference between like I want to play like Chris Potter. Sure, we all do.
Right.
But do can you play all your minor, major, diminished, and augmented triads and all three inversions? Like in half steps, whole steps, the whole thing. Can you do that?
Right.
Then you need to do that.
Right.
Can you do it quietly in the low register of your horn? No? Then you need to do that. You need to
hmm
put that up top. And then all the other thing, and then you have a list, and then the list could be long, but like, you know, we all have this stuff, but we all do. It's easy to do the easy stuff. So let's focus on the hard stuff and like really grow. Yeah, and do the thing, do the work, all that, yada yada.
I
Put the
love
bucket
that because
list
I think for a lot of us, transcribing is the hard thing, you know, especially if your ears aren't like
for sure.
naturally your biggest asset. And you know, there's so many questions I could ask you. I could talk to you about this for hours, but I think a good one would be what came out or what part of transcribing Bird every day for 30 days transferred over to the rest of your practice routine? Because that's something that I always tell people is like, you're not transcribing just to like, okay, I'm done my transcribing. And then that has no, you know, bearing on everything else that you're doing. Transcribing really informs the rest of your practice routine and can give you some new ideas on things you have to work on. Did that happen for both of you? And if it did, what form did that take? Chris, you wanna let us
Yeah.
know?
One big thing I took away from Bird's playing was articulation and
Hmm
how much he makes things pop and how much he makes things stand out. Whatever he wants to make stand out, he does. And I realized when I would listen back at when I transcribe and very much I highly suggest this to anybody watching or listening or any students out there, is to record yourself, not just because you want to listen to yourself, but to give yourself some get some feedback from how you're doing things and how close are you to who you're transcribing, or if you're just taking a solo on something, how do you sound on that and what could you take out of that? And when I would listen back at some of the tunes or the solos or anything I was transcribing a Bird, I noticed like his articulation would sound so much crisper than mine. So that was something I started working on, like even when I was just blowing, like if I was blowing free by myself or if I was transcribing some of him or doing other exercises that I came up with, like if I'm doing like an enclosure type of exercise or something like that, I would start adding in different articulations to make it to make different things pop out and to make things sound different. Because whatever you think you're doing, articulation wise, to project out to other people to hear, you're not doing it as much as you think you're doing it. And
Uh-uh.
that makes a
Nope.
lot of sense. Um, and so that was one of the biggest things I took away from listening to Bird. And he slowly just started seeping into my subconscious after
Yeah.
so many days, where I always take some time to play a tune every day. Like I practice at least a tune every day. It could be a different tune, it could be the same tune for 5 days in a row. But I like to play on a tune, play the melody. Usually I'll set the metronome on something, maybe it's just beat four or something like that, and I like to blow a couple choruses at the end of my practice session. And I noticed that as I did that when I was doing the 30 days, and even now, like certain little bebop kind of cliches sneak in, or like little turnaround things or ornamentations that Bird does just kind of would organically start sneaking in. And I'm just like, oh, I'm pretty sure Bird did this. I'm pretty sure it's just kind of just crept into my playing just because of all like I was saying, the consistency of listening, the doing a tune every day, and then just playing it every day. So that started seeping in as well. So articulation was big, and then just like I said, the bebop language just slowly making its way in and making a lot more sense, if that makes sense. Like it
Yeah.
was falling a lot better in terms of like where it was falling on the beat, or where I was resolving lines, because
Hmm.
Bird has an amazing, like he's like an what like a gymnast or like an acrobatic, where like he can start a line the same way 1,000 times, but he can end it perfectly all 1,000 different ways, which is
Mm.
really cool. And so his resolutions really started sinking into me, because I think it's really easy to start like a really good sounding line, but it's harder to resolve it.
Yeah.
And I think he's such a master at that, and Chris Potter is too. Go figure. But but that resolving of the lines. So that was another big thing of like
Awesome.
where you're landing in those types of things, and that started kind of like coming into my playing, like landing things a lot cleaner or a lot more directly, or what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, I can't think of the word, but
Yeah.
I was way more direct and way more, basically know where I'm going, where I want to be, where I want to land, what rhythm I want to play,
Awesome.
um, doing things. So yeah, it made a lot of clarity. So yeah.
I love it. I love it. What about you, Jeff?
Um, I was taken back by just how sweet and melodic his
Mhm.
playing is. Um, I think I think if you don't, sorry, I think it can be misleading to think that it's just I mean, yeah, and so there are some recordings where it is incredibly fast and really, and it technically amazing and impressive feats of harmonic uh, destruction. But you know, like like I'm so one of the reasons that I decided to keep the notebook, and I'm just kind of like looking over some pages here, is because um, at well, as I was during the process, there'd be one line in particular, or and then this line or this thing he does on on this rhythm changes bridge, or or whatever, and I'd be like, man, I would love to shed that for like a week or a month, but I can't do it now because I'm involved in this. So, and then life happened and the holidays and everything. So I haven't applied really anything from what I took away from the 30 days into my practice session now. But like I said at the beginning of this, this prompt, um, it's insanely melodic, like
Mhm.
insanely melodic, like
Mhm.
and an offshoot of the transcription part of this. I think 3 weeks in, I bought like three bird biographies, and like I've been reading a lot about the life of Charlie Parker. Um, a tragic, we know, but like insanely tragically short, in such a short time that he was actually recorded. Um, but you when he talks about the music that he listened to, like he didn't really listen to jazz, and he
Mm.
didn't even like and or he certainly didn't listen to bebop, which he hated the term. He just called it music. That like he's like, this is music, and I feel him hard on that.
Mm.
Like it's all music, man. And so many people like to call this and this that, and put labels on this, and but it is music. It like we all have the same notes, and so as improvisers, we're arranging those 12 or 24 or 36 or whatever 88, depending on what instrument you play. We're just arranging those notes in the order that we're feeling like that we are able to do, or like the classical composers that Bird spent a lot of time listening to. Is composing those and writing them out. And like if you when you look at the line, I mean, the shapes of the lines. It's like it's all there. It's all what you learn in school. You go up a couple steps, your melody should come down a leap, or you go down a leap, you should come up a step. Now I will, there's no way Bird thought like that, but he obviously had this. He just knew how to create, beautiful lines. And yeah, and like Chris said, just it's the ends of the phrases are it's like that's again, it's like the gymnast analogy that my buddy Sean Knoll, um, you know, passed on to me. Is like you can play what it's like you can do all the twirls and somersaults and triple sow cows, but if you fall and like break your ankle on the landing, it's like you're gonna sound, that's why sticking like that, how you deal with whatever that resolution is, that 5-1, how you deal with that is very important. And all the stuff at the beginning of it can matter, but I think it's not as important. So another long-winded answer
No, I
from
love it,
JV.
man. That's great insight into what you're getting out of it. And I think you're right about like it's just music, and the more you get into the playing of a particular artist, the less of those like adjectives you would use to describe their playing sort of fall away, and I don't know, it becomes a different thing. I don't know what I'm trying to say either. Um,
No, yeah, I agree. I mean, it's like, look, what the majority of the music that I guess that I was digesting was, I didn't write down years of recording and stuff like that, but like what he, even if you call it like a 10-year span, right? Say from like 1945 to or 1942 to like it died in 53, I think, or something like
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
So that's what, 60, 70 years ago. It's still the baddest shit ever.
Yeah.
It's like he is still light years ahead of what anybody can play right now.
yep.
Now, and it's yeah, it's subjective. Hopefully I use that term right. Right. It's we all have our opinions and everything, but I think without a doubt, um, if and it's just my opinion, it's like he's like the answer to the test. That's kind of how another thought that I had on this whole thing about improvising and jazz, whatever you want to call it, and bebop, and I, like I might not strongly believe that bebop is a type of music. I do feel it's a different way of improvising. It's a different language, and it's an insanely hard way to improvise. Like the stuff Bud Powell was doing, like that is hard stuff. Um, and as they were contemporaries of each other, improvising in similar fashion. But I mean, this stuff is still just so bad and so hip, and it all works today. And as for any sort of like beginning improviser, I think that there's an insanely amount of growth potential from you know dealing with like one Charlie Parker solo, and then taking one idea from that, and doing all the things with it, right? Your 12 keys or a couple keys, and adjusting things, playing with rhythm, maybe taking certain notes out and kind of make it your own, because you don't want to just, we don't need more Charlie Parker clones.
Right.
um, we need more individuals. But yeah, it's insanely beautiful.
Oh, that's great. And you always have to like, I always put when I'm listening to Bird in context too, is that like he didn't have a bird to learn that stuff from.
Yeah.
So
Already
it
brings
just,
up
Yeah.
another level. Yeah, it's
yeah,
insane.
it's amazing. Cool. Well, as sort of a final question, final thought, what would you guys say to somebody that's like thinking about maybe inspired by your project, inspired by seeing you guys do this for 30 days? What would you say to somebody that's thinking about doing something like this with that consistency and maybe, keeping themselves accountable, even though they're not doing it in public for a bunch of people? Is it worth it? Should they do it? What is maybe like a tip or two that they could use going into a process like this? Chris, what do you
Hell
think?
yeah.
Yeah, I would say yes, definitely do it. It's gonna change you for the better, guaranteed. Guaranteed. That's like the one guarantee I can give you. If you do this, you will get better at playing music. And just what Jeff said, your ears are gonna grow tremendously because if you don't have any ears right now, if you're just used to reading stuff all the time, like if you're reading out of the Omni book, and that's all you do, put the Omni book away, shut it, and just learn all those solos by ear, and you're gonna grow tremendously from that. Definitely do it. That the one thing I would give you a tip, or the advice, I guess, if you will, is just don't get too hard on yourself if you don't get as far as you want to go, or if you don't get as many notes, or you don't get it to the speed. I mean, you can go look back. All of my 30 days are on YouTube already, but you can go back and look, and some days I could not get it to 100%. Like, it was not happening. Like, it was just too fast, and I'm like, it's not going to happen. I'll come back and visit this and I'll get it some other time, but don't beat yourself up if you can't get to like Bird's level. Like, we all just sat here and laughed about how great Bird was because he didn't even have a bird to learn from. I mean, I guess he had like Lester Young or whatever, but he's pretty good, I guess. But you know, but it's like Bird was doing things that even today, even what Jeff said, even today would be considered one of the best saxophone players in the world, and he was doing it 70, 80 years ago. So it's what the next year's 25. So that's 80. Is that 80 years? Is that 70 years from when he died? Right, 1955 he died. So it's crazy to think how
Yeah,
long this
it's
has
insane.
lasted. So it just blows my mind how long, like, this level of playing, and it will last, and I can't imagine it never being impressive. Like,
Right.
even
Mhm.
100 years from now, it's going to be super impressive, right? Maybe even more impressive.
Yeah,
But
that's what I was gonna say.
yeah.
Oh.
For
But,
sure.
but don't beat yourself up. That's all my advice. Don't beat yourself up if you don't get as far as you want. Just if you are gonna do this, if you commit to it, I mean, which you should. It's you're gonna get a ton out of it. What do you think, Jeff?
1,000%.
Yeah,
1,000%. Do it. Do anything. Do anything for 30 days.
yeah,
Play, play. I did long tones for 30 days
yeah,
and my sound is better. My intonation is better. I mean, it's like transcribe anything for 30 days. Transcribe pop tunes, transcribe trumpet, I mean, I don't even know.
yeah,
It's like, I think, I think transcribing can be like scary to a lot of people,
yeah.
beginners, right?
And if you
Like,
don't,
or
yeah, if you don't like transcribing, that's more reason that you should do it.
exactly. What are the things that you need to get better at doing? Oh, they're all the things that you don't like to do because they're hard and you're not good at it.
Yeah.
So if you want to improve and you want to grow, you have to do that thing. You have to do that thing. And yeah, definitely, it's not, I don't recommend taking it to the level of perfection that I do, but if you can, great. I get so obsessed with, with learning this stuff and like getting inside that sound. And that's the other part about like taking any time out of your day to like try to emulate the sound of these people is just so good for you. I mean, just on a saxophone nerd level, like you're doing, like you're working on your tone, you're working on your technique, you're working on your ears, you're working on your vote. It's like you're doing all the things that you'd spread out individually, like over however many minutes or hours on a practice session, and you're getting them all done, and with this one thing.
Hmm.
So yes, I highly recommend trying. And we even had a handful of people out there like
Yeah.
going on their own 30 days of bird journey, and like, that's how cool is that? I mean, that's
Yeah.
like, like it's pretty awesome. And and yeah, I mean, just like if we were able to inspire like one person to dig in and experience like what we were experiencing, I mean, that's makes it all worth it for me. So
Totally. And one
yeah,
more thing, I look back while Jeff was talking because I have a whiteboard right here, next to Sunny, and it says on that whiteboard, there's a bunch of little sayings I just write up there every so often. I think of things, and it says on there, it's okay to sound bad here, and this is my practice room. This is obviously the studio, and
yeah,
that's like it's okay. Actually, if you sound bad, you're probably getting better,
Hmm.
because if you're practicing
it's
everything you sound
okay.
good at and you're good and you are already good at, like you're not growing.
Right.
So yeah, so maybe write that down in your practice room, maybe write it in your practice log. It's okay to sound bad in here, and don't worry about if you're in school or something and people are walking by and listening and they're like, oh, what's he practicing or she practicing in there, but don't worry about that stuff. Just worry about yourself, put the work in, and it's all going to pay off. That's the main thing.
Man,
So
that's a great parting thought. I always tell my students that when I was in school, it was always the people that sounded worse in the practice room where you're like, what the hell are they doing in there that sounded the best in their
yeah.
performances, you know?
Wow.
So that's definitely a great thing to leave off on. Well, guys, thank you so much for doing this. Like I just
Thanks.
wanted to talk to you guys about what the process was like, and if people out there are like sort of hearing about this for the first time, I'm gonna leave links to everything that Chris and Jeff do in the description. So go back and check out their Instagram and YouTube and watch them go through the process if you didn't get to do it live, because it is so interesting to just see what they were doing and as they moved through it, how things changed and all of that. But mostly, I just want to thank you guys for hanging out with me and doing this interview, and I'm sure it's going to help a lot of people out there.
Thank you, Nick.
Thanks, Nick. Always
Yeah,
a pleasure,
yeah.
man. That beard is looking amazing, by
Thank
the
you
way.
so much.
This
Yeah,
thing is awesome. I
thanks.
think I wish I could grow one of those. It's
I gotta
amazing.
I
So
gotta keep it looking good in 2024.
that's right, man.
Let's
Keep that thing.
go. Let's go.
Whatever beard balm or whatever you're putting in that
That's
thing. It's
right.
looking
I'll
good.
send you what I use, man.
Yes. Thanks so much, Nick. That was great, man. Thank
All
you.
right. Thanks, guys.
All
Later,
right, Jeff.
guys.
Later.